Good evening, everyone. Happy Saturday. It is the first Saturday of the month of February, and we all know that it is Black History Month. So happy Black History Month to all of you and to all of you who are watching. Please, please, please share this broadcast. We are officially live. As I mentioned, this is our first of our series, Relationship Breakup. Today, we are going to be talking about so many awesome things as it relates to relationship breakups and how we can improve ourselves as individuals and how we can improve our relationship with ourselves, right? Because that is one of the most important things that we can do as individuals on this earth. And so today's episode is actually going to be about counseling. Yes, counseling. Does it really work? Should I even try it? What is the benefit of counseling? What is the risk of counseling? All these various things we are going to talk about. And before we go into today's podcast episode, Relationship Breakup Series, I want to share with you our guest for today. She is a dear friend of mine. I've known her for several years. We went to college together, and I'm so excited that she has agreed to serve as one of our speakers for the Life After Her podcast series as it relates to relationship breakups. And actually, before I have her come on and before I read her bio, I just want to share with you all the reason why I decided to do this relationship breakup series. We all know that relationship breakups are very difficult. And just being transparent, in my personal life, I've experienced relationship breakup after relationship breakup after relationship breakup. And I felt like every time I would end a relationship, it would be so difficult for me to be able to navigate, to heal, to move on from that experience. And so as I matured and as I matured and was able to tap into some of the resources that were in my surroundings, I was able to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And so for me personally, I just felt like I can't be the only one going through a relationship breakup. There are so many of us who have experienced it. And my hope is that as we are on this broadcast today, we are able to give you some tools to walk away with to strengthen your heart, to make better decisions, and to develop a stronger relationship with yourself. All right. So, without further ado, I'm going to read Miss Stephanie's bio, and then we are going to bring her to the stage. So, Stephanie is a licensed social worker. She has a dual degree in bachelor's and social work. She has her master's in social work. She's been in the social work field for 15 years, and she's worked in the school system. She served at nonprofit agencies. She also has served as a psychiatrist, social worker, and she's currently a group therapist. She has a passion for mental health, educating others, especially the Black community. She's an avid reader and enjoys traveling, DIY projects, and all things decor. She truly loves the Lord and continues to seek ways to grow in her faith. She is a proud daughter of Haitian immigrants, and she's an older sister. And I will also like to add, she is an absolute dear friend of mine. And so at this time, I am going to bring on Miss Stephanie to the stage. Come on in, Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Stephanie. How you feeling today?
Feeling okay. Thank you for those kind words.
Yes, you're very welcome. So we are going to jump right into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that I had shared a little bit about your bio. So tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a fun fact that you would like the audience to know about you.
Okay. Well, we know it's always tough talking about yourself, especially someone like me who doesn't really like to do that very much. But yeah, so I came to the US when I was 4 years old with my mother. My father was already living here, so we joined him. And we had a lot of other family here in the US. And what else? Um, I have a younger brother. He is 5 years younger. He and I are really close. We weren't always close because, as siblings do, we always fought. But especially
Mhm.
after I moved out the house and he got older, then we definitely became closer. I would say he's one of my really good friends now. Could talk to him about pretty much anything. Um, Talked about what I do. I work in mental health, been working in mental health for over 8 years now. Really love the mental health field because I think that a lot of people are out here struggling and we don't really we don't prioritize mental health the same way that we prioritize our physical health. So that's one of my passions and yeah, I continue to find new ways so that I can help my people, especially my Haitian people, my Black people, because
Mhm.
we know the stigma that's attached to mental health. So my job is to make sure that I'm being as upfront and honest as I can about mental health and making sure that we are putting it at the forefront. Even though I believe that we're getting better, but there's definitely room for improvement. What else? A fun fact about myself. I had to really think about this one, but my mother told a story that when she gave birth to me, there was another lady in the either she was in the room with her or in the room next to her who was also giving birth, and that lady's child unfortunately had passed away. So they
Mm.
thought that so when they came to my mother, they told my mother, your child passed away, and they had given me to the other lady. So my mother was very insistent. She was like, no, my child did not pass away. She was alive. She was crying. I held her. And then I had some other relatives who were there as well. And they also were like fighting. And then they realized that they made a mistake. So they switched us back. So they gave me back to my mother. And it doesn't hurt that I look like them. So I know that the switch actually was, they actually put me back to the right family. So yeah, that's the fun fact about myself. I was accidentally switched at birth.
Wow, Stephanie, I had no idea. This is my first time hearing about this story. All the years I've known Stephanie, and that not only is a fun fact, but that is a miraculous fact
It
because
is.
that could have gone another way. But
Very much
I'm
so.
so
My life would have been
grateful.
definitely different.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's okay. That's awesome. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for giving us a little bit of background about who you are and what you bring to the table. And guys, just so that you know, you are able to ask questions in the chat box. So please ask your questions as we go live, and we will try to answer your questions as you have them. All right, let's get right into it, Stephanie. So, my first question to you is what, growing up, what was your understanding of healthy relationships?
I would say that there wasn't really an
Yeah.
example of healthy relationship. I didn't know the difference. I didn't know if there
Mm,
could be a healthy relationship because all I saw was dysfunction. And I
mm,
think a lot of people from the Caribbeans can speak to that, where we see a lot of abuse, we see a lot of lack of communication, we see, just poor relationships in general. So that was my norm. That's what I thought all relationships were. It wasn't until I got older that I realized there could
mm.
be something different. There could be something healthy. But for the longest time, that's all I knew. And not just, with my parents, but also my extended family as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that because when you don't know any better, you just don't know any better. And
Mhm.
so when you're used to being in a certain environment or growing up in a certain household and that's all you see, you don't have anything to measure that against to be able to determine whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy.
Mhm.
And so talk a little bit about that transition for you as an adult when you realize that okay, this isn't the norm or this shouldn't be or this does not feel right.
Hmm.
Talk a little bit about that.
I think, especially going away to college, that was my first time that I was away from my family of origin, from my support system, my little community, because
Yes.
we were very much insulated in the Haitian community where we didn't really socialize with a lot of other people. So it was really my first time getting to befriend people outside of the Haitian culture. So that was definitely a learning curve for me, because now I'm getting to hear their perspective on relationships, and also seeing relationships being modeled in a different way, and not
Mhm.
always healthy, but just seeing relationships in a different dynamic than what I was used to seeing within the Haitian community. And I think that really caused the shift, especially being part of the being part of the student community that I was on campus, which was called Living Branch Ministries, that Nicole was also a part of.
Mhm.
So that, and our campus minister, Reverend Stan, educating us about relationships and how godly relationships work, that was really the transition for me, the turning
Mhm.
point of seeing relationships in a different way. And then also my one cousin who did not grow up within the Haitian community because she was in foster care. So seeing her and the way her and her husband were interacting, and she actually married an American, African American. So seeing their interaction was like, oh, this is what a healthy relationship can look.
Mhm.
So that was another example for me as well.
Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think I also had that same experience when it wasn't until I got to college, I got around you guys, um, being around Reverend Stan and just a different community than at home, right? To understand or see a different perspective and to be able to decipher, okay, this is healthy and maybe I should lean into this. And so I think so many of us have those experiences at one point or another in our lives. And trying to transition from unhealthy to healthy is difficult. So, what do you think did it for you to say, okay, I want to live my life in a certain way and not, how I may have saw when I grew up, or just kind of figuring out which way your life journey was gonna go?
Well, I think it was just seeing the hurt that different family members were experiencing. And I'm like, I didn't want to go through that hurt,
Yeah.
because I've always been someone who's very much reserved, private, and I'm not always willing to open up. Come a very long way, praise God.
Yes.
I'm not always like, vulnerable, but just seeing that there is beauty in being vulnerable. And when you really do care for someone, your inclination is to open up more and to share a different part of yourself, so that way you can connect more with the other person. And we were made to live in community. We were made to connect with other people. That's how God made us. So that definitely, made me want to do different than what I was accustomed to, because I didn't want to experience that hurt. I didn't want to continue along the same negative patterns of behavior that I saw, because, if you know better, you do better. Hopefully, you're doing better if you know
Hopefully, yeah.
better. So that was my whole goal, is like, now that I have this knowledge, and not only relationally, but also educationally, I'm seeing these patterns and I'm noticing what is healthy, what is not healthy. Now the onus is on me for me to change.
Yeah. Yeah, is the onus is on me to change, and I agree with that 100% because we do have to take responsibility for our healing, right? We're not responsible for, I mean, sometimes we can't help the environment we're surrounded around or we're born into, but the onus is on us to make that change. I totally agree. Now, you talk about community. Do you think the society that we live in has an impact on how we break up or how we navigate through like relationship breakups? Do you think society has an impact on that and
Oh,
how we do that?
I most definitely think society has a big impact because, we're social creatures. So we're going to pick up
Mhm.
on different things. We don't live in a bubble. We're not isolated. Even when we try to isolate ourselves, we're still going to pick up the different things that we see in society. And one of those things that society tells us is that, this one doesn't work out, you just move on to the next, like it doesn't impact you whatsoever. And we know that's not true, especially because the way that God wired us for us to connect with individuals. Me being with someone and then next thing you know, we break up. It's not that easy for you to just move on. And kind of like when you're just changing your underwear, like it's not as easy. It's not easy, You
It's
can't just
not.
say, okay, I'm taking it off, I'm putting on another one. But that's what people do. A lot of people do that, and that stems from their own brokenness. A lot of
Mhm.
people find that they're not able to be alone. They have that what's called codependency, whereas like they find their value in other people and they can't be alone. So that's why we see it so prevalent in society that somebody breaks up with someone today and the next day, they're already in a committed relationship again. Like how? you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I would definitely say that it definitely impacts us. I choose to operate outside of the norm and stand
Yes.
because that's what we're called to do, is called to stand out. So
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Yes. So I have two questions because you're giving us such great information. What how does Stephanie operate outside the norm,
hmm
outside of what society presents to us? Like what does that look for you as a young woman who is a working professional, who loves God, who desires to be a change agent in the society we live in? What does that look like for you?
Well, for me, and I know this is going to be controversial, I'm not one of those individuals who believe in dating multiple people at a time.
Mhm.
I like to get to know one person at a time. So I don't have a roster, I don't have a group of
Mhm.
men that I'm
Yeah.
talking to. Is literally just that one person because I know me and I know what I'm capable of. So I'm like, one person, and I want to be able to dedicate that attention, that resource to whatever it is that I have to that person. Not saying that I'm jumping headlong into relationships because I don't, but just taking my time and also just making sure that I'm being spirit led about whatever relationships that I enter into. One of the things that I do is I will pray and I will ask God, like, hey, if this is not a relationship that is going to bear any fruit, please remove it expeditiously because
Mhm.
I don't want to waste any
Expedition.
time. I don't have time to waste. I don't want to waste somebody's time. I don't want them to waste my time. So that's one of the things that I always am mindful to do. And God does answer because
Yes.
I've seen it proven time and time again where I pray that prayer and he's gone. And sometimes,
Yeah.
I'm like, dang, God, that was fast. But that's what happens. And yeah, that's one of the things that I choose to do differently.
Yeah.
And I don't really date for the sake of just dating. I date with purpose. Like my intention is, to hopefully lead to marriage one day. So that's always the ultimate goal. So if a man only wants to, just casually date or just be having fun out here. That's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not in that stage of life. I was never in that stage of life where I was casually dating. I would say I was one of those late bloomers, as you call it, because when people were out here dating all that stuff, I wasn't. I was very much in my books, focused on like my education, focused on my healing, because that
Mhm.
was definitely very much important for me because I recognized that about myself. If I wasn't in a healthy place, then how could I be healthy in a relationship? So I definitely
Mhm.
took my time with doing that. So that's one of the
Mm.
things that I know a lot of people aren't doing. They're not taking time to heal. They're jumping in and out of relationships and wondering why their relationships are failing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think I've heard this quote before, and when it was shared with me, I never really I understood what they were saying, but it just never sat right with me. And the quote was, in order to get over one man, you have to get underneath another.
I've heard that, and that's foolishness.
Yeah, you've heard that, right? And to your point, it really doesn't lend to your true healing within yourself because like you said, you're jumping from one relationship to another, not really addressing the brokenness or the hurt that's
Mhm.
inside of you, and you're going back to that word you said, codependency. You're depending on, others to maybe fill the void you may have, or just hoping that they will heal you in some way. And so I agree with you. I think that being able to really date intentionally while also getting to know yourself
Mhm.
better, I think counseling lends itself to that. And that's another thing that's taboo in our community, counseling and going to
Mhm.
see a therapist, because there's a stigma around going to seek professional help, and it's not. And for me personally, some of the moments where I really got to know myself better, like the good parts of me, the hurt parts of me, the trigger parts of me, was in my counseling session. And so there's definitely a benefit to that. So I just, hope people are able to receive that.
Definitely.
Um, so what do you think are some reasons for relationship breakups in
Um,
your opinion?
and we kind of addressed some of it is the lack of healing, unresolved hurts, unresolved trauma that a lot of us have experienced, and we carried into the relationships, expecting that the person is going to meet those needs.
Mm,
And that's just very unrealistic because I'm like, they're human just like you are. And I'm pretty sure they have their own issues that they need to work out themselves. So you're bringing two broken individuals together who have not done the work to heal, and then that's a recipe for disaster.
yeah.
That's one. The other thing is just lack of communication and lack of effective communication. A lot, we want to be seen, we want to be heard in relationships, and there's some people in relationships all they do is talk and they're not listening to the other person's perspective. So effective communication, it's a two-way street. Like, I need to hear you and you need to allow me to talk as well. So it needs to
Mhm.
go both ways. And a lot of people can, attribute that to the cause of their relationship breaking down is not communicating effectively. I would
Yeah.
say those would be, um, and then also our own insecurities,
Mm,
because we, once again, back to us believing that this person is going to heal a part of us that it's not meant for them to heal. And the only person that can heal it is God,
yeah.
So we're seeking validation from this person, and unfortunately, they're flawed, just like we
Yeah.
are. So
Yeah.
they can't meet those expectations, but yet we keep seeking to get that validation from them as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I also think another reason is the relationships that we may have seen growing up. And you were
mhm,
kind of saying this earlier. The relationships that we model after is, what we model after. And so if that's all we see, that's kind of all we do and all we know. And so I hope, as we are just sharing information, people can see that there is another way.
yes.
There's a better way. So as a licensed social worker, do you think we have the capacity to minimize relationship breakups? Do you think that's
I
a
think we do
thing?
it all the time. We do
Mhm.
it all the time, especially when, we experience a breakup and then, one of our friends will check in on us and be like, hey, I heard that you broke up with so and so. How you doing? Oh, I'm fine, girl. That was dead weight. I had to get rid of him. But knowing good and well that inside, like, we are falling apart, but we have this persona that we're good and that it was nothing, but in reality, no, we're struggling because it was a loss. A relationship
Yeah.
breakup is a loss, and it can be likened to a death of a loved one, you know?
Mm,
And I think a lot of us, we don't equate it to that, but it's really traumatic, you know?
yeah.
So for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that, what you just said, with the ending of a relationship can be likened to
Mhm.
the death of a loved one? That's very intricate, and I think people don't always recognize that that is the case. I know for me personally, I just never understood why it was so difficult for me to navigate through, the ending of a relationship. But you're right, it is like it's the ending of something, right?
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit more about how that's similar?
I think it's just thinking about like you build a connection with this individual. You have your hopes and your dreams connected with that
Mm,
person, and when the relationship falls apart, when you guys break up, even though you probably could still see the person, around, unless you move across the world or something, but
yeah,
it's never the same. You can never go back to what it was before, and that is very similar to a loss. Not saying that it's the same, because there are
sure.
definitely different elements for sure, but as someone who has experienced both, I'm like, it can be likened to that, because all your dreams, all your hopes, and everything that you had wrapped up in seeing you two together, now is gone. And now
Yeah.
to you have to navigate life without this person, and that's the trial. Is, how is my life going to be different now that you are no longer part of my life? And when someone you love is no longer around, when they have transitioned out of this world, that is the same thing that you're feeling, is that grief. Like, okay, how am I going to navigate life without this individual that I saw my future with? So
Mhm.
that's why, relationship why we shouldn't take relationship breakups lightly, because it
Mm.
is a death of something. And whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we have to deal with those feelings of moving on without that person. And we have to move on. If not, then we're gonna, fall into depression. And that's where a lot of people usually end up see me, because, they've had a
Yeah.
traumatic loss in their life, and now they don't know how to navigate those feelings. And a lot of times they want to end their life because they don't
Mm.
see themselves moving on without this person.
Yeah. Wow, that was very well explained, and you put it in very simple terms. Yeah, that was good. If you were to bring more attention as a social worker, because you've had a lot of experience in this field. If you were to bring more attention to relationship breakups, what do you think we should focus more on?
I would say I'm big on boundaries. So
Mm,
focusing on healthy boundaries within the relationship, making sure that we're creating, before we even get to that breakup point, that we're creating a healthy space within the relationship. And by healthy boundaries, I'm saying making sure that we talked about the communication piece, but making sure that you're also having your own existence, your own life, your own activities, things that you want to pursue, because it goes back to the whole codependency thing. You don't want your whole world wrapped up in this person, because that's what
mhm.
happens when you break up, right? Then you're like,
Yeah.
I can't live without him because I did everything for him, or I did everything with him. So just making sure that you have your own identity. And that doesn't mean for you to be like, I'm not doing anything with you. You do you, I do me. It just means that, I have my activities, you have your activities, and we have things that we enjoy together as well. So, another thing when it comes to setting healthy boundaries as well is just making sure that, we're not inviting other people into our relationship that's unnecessary, because we know that there's a lot of outside voices that want to contribute and think that they know best.
Yes.
But yeah, so try to keep some of those individuals as they, those people who think that they know best. There's nothing wrong with us getting some, constructive feedback, things like that, but they shouldn't be the ones controlling our relationships. So those are,
Hmm.
I think I answered that question, but those are things that came to the
Yes.
forefront.
Yeah. Yeah. How I think healthy boundaries practice even before, like in the relationship, but even before you get into relationship,
Hmm.
because sometimes our lack of boundaries shows in the type of relationships that we have or the selection that we have in the men or the women that we date or entertain or allow into our space.
Hmm.
And so that is something I had to work through in counseling to strengthen my boundaries and to continue, like, and not, I don't want to say enforcing, but continuing to establish those lines of
Yeah.
boundaries, especially when you haven't really practiced them and you didn't grow up understanding what like, because I didn't know what boundaries were until probably I got into college,
I
maybe
didn't
a
either.
little, right? Maybe into adulthood where I
Mhm.
really started learning boundaries. And sometimes boundaries feel like you're a mean person or you
Yes.
don't care, right?
Yes.
And going through that like struggle of yes, no, or this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm not doing, but also still trying to consider the other person's feelings or not come off as
Mhm.
mean. It can be an internal battle, it can be an
Very
internal
much
struggle.
so.
Yeah. And so having boundaries, practicing those boundaries in the relationship and even before, I think is very,
Mhm.
very important.
Yeah, and I think that's where the communication piece comes in handy too. Is you know, I don't that trust as well, because if I trust you, if I'm vulnerable with you, then I can be able to let you know what my boundaries are, because I trust
Mhm.
that you're not going to betray them. You're not going to try to manipulate me. So that's
Yeah.
key, and we need that from both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a two-way street.
Mhm.
So how important is it when it comes to relationship breakups? Do you believe that people should seek out counseling after they've ended a relationship? And let's also kind of, I want to throw this in there too, because situationship is a known word in our culture.
Yes, it
And right, and oftentimes situationships can feel like a relationship, but it's not a relationship at all. And so you
is.
still have those same emotional experiences in situationships as you would in relationships. So back to my question, how important is it when it comes to receiving counseling when it comes to the ending of relationships or situationships?
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to say that after every relationship breakup, you need to go to counseling. Hopefully, you're already seeking counseling for yourself before, the relationship fell apart. But I think for those significant relationships, losses that we've experienced, like, you're having a really hard time moving on, where you're constantly in I would say like a fog almost, where you have tunnel vision, you can't really move past this
Hmm.
loss that you've experienced. In that regard, then I'm like, yes, most definitely you should be in counseling, trying to navigate, why am I feeling this way, how can I move on from this. But if it's like, you broke up with this individual and you saw the relationship ending, and we know there are those relationships where it's like 6 months before you even ended, you knew because you were already gone, you just hadn't
Mhm.
officially said it. In
Yeah.
instances, I would say, like, you already knew, and you've kind of been healing yourself along the way to get to that point where you can officially say, okay, the relationship is over. But for instance, like, let's say it kind of came out of left field in a way where you thought things were going great in the relationship, and all of a sudden the person tells you, like, this ain't working for me. Then it kind of hits you like a ton of bricks, so in that regard, for sure,
Yeah.
definitely seek out therapy so that you can navigate those difficult emotions. It's not going to hurt. I'm not going to say that to go after every single one. But if you're literally only going after every single breakup, then there was definitely there was a disconnect along the way, right? Then you
Mhm.
didn't really get the help that you need. You didn't really do the work that you needed to do, because then you're kind of repeating the same patterns of behavior in a sense. And that's the whole point of therapy, to help you to realize what those patterns of behavior, those negative patterns, and to come up with some solutions, come up with some different tools that we can put in place so we're not constantly repeating those negative patterns. So that's what I would say.
Yes, you said something key. Repeating the same patterns over and over again. What are some of the myths that you want to debunk when it comes to counseling and therapy? Because there's a stigma
Mhm.
about therapy and counseling, and sometimes the only way to stop repeating those patterns is to seek professional help. So, what are some of the myths that you would like to debunk about going to see a therapist?
One, you're not weak. You're not
Mhm.
crazy, because I hear that a lot. So just because you go and see a professional does not mean that you are weak. Let's be honest, there's a lot of us walking around with a lot of hurt, and we don't know how to appropriately address those hurts. We don't even know the language to be able to
Mm.
hurt. But when we go see a trained professional, their job is to help you to get to that point where you can articulate those hurts. They're not gonna, tell you what you should do, because that's never our aim, and we don't do that. If you're doing that, then you're not being ethical. But
Yeah.
our job is to help you to get to the point where you're able to say, okay, this is what I have to do. Like, all the tools are there for you, but you just have to pick, like, okay, the wrench is the one that I need to be using in order to tighten this bolt, so to speak.
Mhm.
So that's the whole purpose of therapy. So you're not crazy, you're not weak. And then your family are not your therapist. I know a lot of us want to believe that, like, oh, I got family, I got friends, I can turn to them. One, they're not able to be unbiased, right? Because they
Mhm.
already have a history with you. They have preconceived notions about you. So the way that a therapist can get to the heart of the problem, especially when we're talking about a relationship, and what did you do to lend itself to the relationship breakdown? Your family is probably gonna tell you, oh, he ain't this, he ain't that, because they're trying to protect you. But a therapist is going to help you to recognize what were some of the things that you did to lead yourself
Mm.
to the relationship breakup. So their job is to be non-biased, to be able to help you to see some of those things. So your family members are not your therapist. And then two, along with that same line of your family not being your therapist, it's not fair to go to your family every single time you're going through a breakup, or whenever you're having problems, because guess what, they got problems themselves, and a lot of times they have not addressed their own problems,
Mm.
so they're operating from a place of hurt. Their answers, their solutions that they're giving you is colored through the lens of their hurt, their trauma.
Mm.
So they're not able to separate those two. So I would say, yeah, those would be my top two that I can think of.
Okay. Okay. Those are really, really good. So what do you think are the rewards of going to see a counselor or a therapist? What are some of the benefits?
You learn more about yourself. That's for sure. Whether the good, the bad, the ugly, the uglier, you learn all of those things about yourself. It's because it's not always going to be pretty. And as a matter of fact, it shouldn't be pretty, especially
Mm.
if you're doing the work. It's not going to be pretty, because you're going to start to unearth some things about you that you're not going to like, you're not going to be proud of, because one, we're humans, we're flawed individuals, we make mistakes, and we make more mistakes, so when you're in counseling, you're going to start seeing some things. But at the end, if you're doing it the right way, if you're consistent, you're doing the work. Like if your therapist gives you an assignment, because sometimes we do, like if we're telling you to journal how you've been feeling so that you can start to see some patterns of behavior. If we're telling you to do some exercises, like if you're experiencing anxiety and we're telling you to start taking some deep breaths and you're not applying any of those things, then you're not going to be able to see any results. But if you are doing the work, you're going to start to see that you feel lighter. You're going to see that you are more at peace. Not saying that you're not going to have problems, because we know that life comes with problems. However, when we do encounter those problems, we're going to be able to handle them in a much more healthier manner. Maybe before, when you had a breakup, you would turn to, you would turn to alcohol, you would turn to other substances that weren't healthy, that's not going to serve you in the long run. But now that you've been going to therapy and you learned, how to appropriately navigate, now when you're going through a breakup, maybe you pick up a hobby, a healthy hobby. Like you start, jogging, you start, I don't know, you start knitting something
Yeah.
to kind of actually get you in a better frame of mind, so those are some of the things that therapy is going to help you to see. And one of the benefits, really. But yeah, before we can get to that good part, we're gonna have to, like, we're gonna have to
Mm.
do some work. And the
Yeah.
work part, it's not fun. It's never fun. You're gonna be on the floor, you're gonna be crying, and that's because those things need to come out, just like
Yeah.
when we're talking about, if you ate some bad food and your stomach is all bubbling and stuff like that, but once
Yeah.
it comes out, you feel that relief. And that
Yeah.
needs to happen. We need to help those things come out of us so that we can have the relief, and then we can have those healthy relationships, whether with a significant other or with our family members, with our coworkers, whoever God brings in
Yeah.
our lives. But that is the ultimate goal, is for us to be able to have those healthy relationships. And without us doing the work to get to that point, we can't achieve that.
Yeah. Woo, you said a mouthful, Stephanie. That was really, really good. The part that stuck out to me was you said counseling shouldn't be pretty. And that's the reality of it, because you're addressing things that may have happened in your childhood that you maybe never talked about, or and how that, plays a role in your
Mhm.
adulthood. But at the end of the day, is all purpose to make you a better person,
Mhm.
to be healthier for you, for your family, and for your community. And who doesn't want that, right?
Right.
So has counseling worked for you? Because I know we're talking about other people and their experience, or how it benefits their lives, and the reward of counseling. Do you feel like counseling worked for you, just in your own personal life's journey?
I would say it has. And coming from a culture where we don't talk about our feelings, where we keep everything bottled in, we hide things. The first year that I got to college, as a first generation college student in my family, was really hard. It was hard navigating being away from home, being away from the foods that I'm used to, my culture,
Yeah.
everything. So I sought out the free services on campus, and that was one of the wisest decisions I could have made. And I'm glad I did, even though that first experience, and I will touch on that later on, that first experience wasn't like, oh my gosh, this was the best experience ever. And
Mhm.
it could have deterred me from, counseling, from therapy, but it actually was just the beginning of my passion for mental health. But yeah, back to that. So I was seeing the psychologist on campus, and we had, I think, 6 sessions. And so I took very much advantage of that, just disclosing what was going on in me trying to navigate being away from home, trying to navigate my courses, and thinking that I was gonna flunk out of college and prove my father right, because that was something that he had said, right
Mm.
before I went. And those are the hurts that we hold on
Yeah.
to. Right?
Yeah.
So that was something that he had said. So that was a fear of mine, was like, me flunking out of college and having to go back home in shame. So disclose all of that in counseling. And I'm going to be honest, we weren't a good fit. And that's one of the things that we have to also be mindful of when we are going to therapy. Sometimes we're just not going to click with our therapist. And the beauty is, we don't have to stick with that person. We
Mm.
can, continue until we find someone that is going to be best suited for us, that is going to be really more sympathetic towards us. And it could have been because I had an older white man. Who knows?
Mm.
That was my first experience. And for me, I didn't really connect with him, even though I was able to talk freely. And I think that was the pivotal moment for me, was being able to disclose and learning that, hey, I can disclose to someone. And part of it was like, I don't know this man from a can of paint,
Yeah.
so I will never have
Yeah.
to see him again. And
Right.
I never saw him on campus. Literally,
Mhm.
it was just during our sessions was the only time I saw him. So I actually completed all of my 6 sessions, I believe, with him, but I felt like I needed more. It wasn't enough for me. So maybe a few years later, I ended up getting connected to an African American woman, and I felt like it was more suited for me. Not only was she a person that looked like me, but she was also a woman of faith, which was very important
Mm.
for me in my journey. Having somebody to be able to understand when I'm talking about, no, there are certain standards as a woman of God that
Yeah.
that I uphold myself to, that he could not relate to,
Yeah.
So that was definitely beneficial for me. And she also helped me to see some patterns that I was engaged in that wasn't healthy.
Mm.
So I would say those two experiences definitely helped me to where I am now. And in the interest of full disclosure, I have not been in therapy since my last one with the woman, and it's not for lack of trying. I work in the field, so I know how hard it is to be
Yeah.
connected with an individual who we're gonna connect with. And for the longest time, I've been trying to connect with somebody, but because of life circumstances or schedules, it just never worked out. Maybe about 3 years ago, I had a significant loss that came completely out of left field. And that time I was like, I need to find a therapist for sure,
Yeah.
because I know that I could not deal with the feelings that I was feeling on my own. And
Yeah.
I tried, but during that time, everybody else was now looking for a therapist because COVID.
Mm.
It was in the midst of
Yeah.
COVID, and people were now starting to talk about the importance of mental health and
Yeah.
making sure that we're seeing a therapist. So everybody else was trying to see a therapist as well. So I was unsuccessful with being able to connect with a therapist, but it still continues to be my goal today, is to find a
Okay.
therapist that meets my particular criterias, because there's a famous social worker also. She is a shame researcher, Brene Brown, and she talks about, making sure that when we as social workers or therapists go see a therapist, we need one who sees people like us, because because their BS meter is up, right? So that they
Oh,
know they know what we do, so we're more apt to kind of like, not be.
right.
So we need one who are just like us. So that's why it's really important for me to find someone who understands like what I do, and also
Yeah.
will recognize when I'm BSing and will call me on it and challenge me to grow. But I do have certain people, like my coworkers, who are also in the field, who support me, because we need one another. So
Yeah.
those are the ones that I've been leaning on, and they lean on me as well, so that we could be able to, when I am struggling with something, to present it to them of like, hey, how would you deal with this particular scenario?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we do that a lot with one another, and I think that's the beauty in finding those connections as well, because
Yeah.
not all of our coworkers are going to be great connections
Yeah.
for us. But these particular individuals, they're really great, and they've been doing it much longer than I have, so they're a great sounding board. So
Yeah.
yeah, those have been my experience thus far with therapy, and it's an ongoing journey. It doesn't
Yeah.
end. And if you continue to live this life, you're going to want to make sure that you're connected with an individual that's going to be able to help you navigate those situations. And I'm not saying that you should be seeing a therapist every week, because sometimes we just need those maintenance check-ins, like
Yeah. Yeah.
once you've been able to transition from those weekly or bi-weekly, now maybe it would be like once a month I could check in with you, or quarterly, because I need a little pick me up, or I just want to make sure that I stay on the right track, which is very important, because we don't want to go through those weeks of therapy and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm great, I don't ever need you again. Like, no, be honest.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we need those pick me ups every now and then, but it's a journey that I continue to be on, because it's very important, especially
Yeah.
because of what I do. There's a
Yeah.
lot involved in it.
Yeah. And you see and experience a lot in your own
Mhm.
profession. So it's great to have that support. And just as my personal friend, I think there are a couple of us in our friend group who have gone to therapy or are in therapy. And I think that is such a beautiful thing, because it's like, this community of women who are friends are doing their best to become a better version of themselves. And ultimately, within our friendship group, we all benefit from that.
Yeah.
So when we're better individuals, your children benefit from that, your spouse benefits from that, your coworkers benefit from that. I work with high school students, and they are beautiful people, but
Yes,
they
they are.
know
They're a
they
challenge.
know yes, they know how to get on. I don't want to say get. They know how to get to
Yeah.
me. They know how to get, or not even know how to get to me. They'll do things that they really just don't think about. And I'll be like, y'all, come on now. Y'all trying to stress
Hmm.
Miss Queenie out. And so through my own personal journey of going to therapy, it helps me to be more patient. It helps me to have like compassion for
Yes.
them, or put myself in their shoes and empathize with them. And I'm telling you, and I feel like the healthier you are, the more positive energy gravitate towards you.
Hmm.
Because people need that.
Yeah.
Um, and another thing I wanted to also mention about therapy is that, just from my own experience, the younger generation, they they are very eager, or they're not hesitant at all
Yeah.
to see a therapist.
Yeah.
Like, they are very open to having a counselor. There have been, students that I've worked with that will come into my office and say, I need to talk to someone, or I need a therapist. And they don't shy away from that. And I
Hmm.
love that about this generation, because during our time growing up, and I don't know if this was your experience, Stephanie, but in my experience in my household, we could not talk about what went down inside our house. And so and in the grand scheme of things, I understand why my parents said that, but we could not talk about anything. And I think that trickles down to why some people may be hesitant with seeking
Hmm.
out a counselor or a therapist. And so I had to, work through that as an adult as well. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. So
Thank
yeah.
God. Yes.
Yes, thank God. Thank God. So we're gonna wrap it up, but I want to ask two more questions before we close out. For an individual who is having doubts about going to counseling, what advice would you give them?
Just do it.
Just do
Just do it. Because
it.
honestly, it's like pulling off a band-aid. If we do it slowly, then it's gonna hurt more. But if you just, pull it off, is gonna hurt less, because the more you second
Yeah.
guess yourself, the more you're just gonna keep waiting and waiting, and you're never gonna actually do it. And of course, we're scared of the unknown. That's just us. But once you actually go forth and do it, you're gonna see how much better your life could be once you actually work through those things. Then you're like, wow, what did I wait this long for? So yeah, just do it. And you're not doing it for other people. You're not doing it for your parents. You're not doing it for your kids or any of those people. You're doing it for you, because once you get that healing, then everybody else, like Nicole previously said, everybody else is going to benefit. But do it for you, because you need to
Mm,
be the best version of you that you can be. So yeah,
yeah.
like Nike, just do it.
Just do it, y'all. Just do it. Y'all heard it from Stephanie. All right. Any last remarks for our listeners?
Um, Let me think. Make healthy choices. Okay. Before you
Mm,
go into any relationship, just make sure that you are in a good place mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Because if you're not, then we know we're susceptible to so much more other stuff,
mm,
other hurts, other manipulations from individuals. So just make sure that you're in a healthy place and that you love yourself, which is always primary. Because I'm not saying other people can't love you if you don't love yourself, but then we'll be able to recognize what is healthy, what's not healthy, what you're deserving of, what you're not deserving of, the way that people should speak to you. So if you
mm.
love yourself, if you don't respect yourself, then you're going to think that this is acceptable. So be in a healthy place for yourself, so that way you can be a much better, healthier person. So that's pretty much it. And God bless.
Yes. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Healthy is the word for 2024. Healthy mindset, healthy relationships, healthy interactions, healthy views of ourselves. Healthy is the word for 2024. So, Stephanie, I hope you enjoyed being on this podcast as much as
I
I enjoyed having you on. I thank you so, so very much just for your willingness to support me as a friend and to share such rich resources and information to, I think, people who really, really need it and who may not say they need it, but they really, really need it. And so they will be blessed by it. I know they will. And I pray God will bless you.
Thank
God
you.
will bless you.
One last thing I forgot to add. I do
Yeah.
want to thank you, Nicole, once again. I know I was giving you a little hard time about it. The podcast, just because I'm not a social media person. That's not my platform. I leave that up to Nicole and those like her. But thank you for reaching out to me and thinking of me worthy enough to appear on your podcast, to be able to share some of the things that God has taught me along the way, and just being a wonderful friend throughout the years. Also for your wonderful podcast, which you're doing with your book,
Yeah.
Life After Her, and just how you navigate those relationships.
Mhm.
And after, you bring
Yes.
navigating the life after that as well. And I think that God has tremendous things in store for you. So I'm godly proud of you, and just where we come from, being college students together,
Yes.
broke college students, and what God has us now is just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's just an honor and a privilege to be part of your journey. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so very much, Stephanie. And honestly, you guys played such a big role in that life after her, and you guys are still playing a role. So, so I'm just glad and thankful for each of you.
Likewise.
All right, Steph, you have a good night, and I'm gonna stay on a couple of minutes to wrap things up. So take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you guys have been blessed by what was shared. Please, please, please make sure that you share this broadcast so that others are able to view what was discussed. It was such rich information that we discussed, and I truly, truly hope that you guys are able to get something out from this. Next week, don't forget to tune in same time. We are going to have guest Faith Eggers come and talk to us about what is abuse, identifying abusive traits, and how to heal. So make sure you guys tune in next Saturday, February the 10th at 7 p.m. Same place, same time. I hope you guys have a blessed weekend. And remember that God is proud of you. Peace.